Welcome to our guide on toasting nuts before baking, the small step that unlocks essential oils and deepens every nutty flavor. We'll explore the science behind the perfect toast, why raw nuts fall short in baked goods, and the temperature sweet spot that brings out aroma without burning. You'll learn how to tweak texture, aroma, and crunch with different methods, timing, and whether oil roasted or dry roasted is best. Plus, practical tips on storage, when not to toast, and professional tricks to get consistent results every time. 1. The science behind the perfect toasted nut. Have you ever wondered why professional bakers swear by toasting nuts before adding them to their recipes? The answer lies in the incredible transformation that happens when nuts meet heat. When you toast nuts, their natural oils are released, intensifying the flavor in ways that raw nuts simply can't match. A bit of heat applied for a small amount of time blooms raw nuts, releasing their aromatic volatile oils and caramelizing their surface. This isn't just about warming them up, it's about fundamentally changing their chemical structure. The process involves the Maillard reaction, a complex chemical transformation that typically kicks in from around 140 to 165 degrees Celsius, 280 to 330 degrees Fahrenheit. Think of it this way. When nuts are toasted, they're essentially getting a complete flavor makeover. Toasting nuts brings their oils to the surface, making those oils more available to blend with whatever you're adding the nuts to. It's like giving your recipe an instant upgrade in complexity and depth. 2. Why raw nuts fall short in baked goods. Raw nuts in your cookie dough or cake batter are like shy party guests. They're there, but they're not really making themselves known. Toasting nuts takes away their raw, sort of green flavor and gives them roasty, toasty brown notes. Without toasting, you're missing out on layers of flavor that could transform your baking from ordinary to extraordinary. If you skip toasting and just toss raw walnuts, pecans, or almonds straight from the pantry or freezer into your cookie dough or cake batter, they won't get a chance to fully develop that deep, toasty flavor. The nuts might cook in the oven alongside your batter, but they won't achieve the same level of flavor development as pre-toasted ones. Consider this. When nuts are buried inside cookie dough or cake batter, they're essentially steaming rather than browning. The moisture from the surrounding batter prevents them from reaching the temperatures needed for proper flavor development. The oil from the toasted nuts will infiltrate the dough, making it even more delicious. 3. The temperature sweet spot for maximum flavor. Getting the temperature right is crucial for unlocking those coveted nutty flavors without burning your precious ingredients. Preheat oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Bake for 5 to 10 minutes until the nuts darken in color a couple shades and the aroma of toasted nuts is strong in the kitchen. This temperature range hits the sweet spot for flavor development. Research suggests that different temperatures produce different results, with moderate temperatures generally providing good sensory properties. Going too high risks burning the outside before the inside develops flavor, while too low won't trigger the necessary chemical reactions. The beauty of this temperature range is that it allows the Maillard browning reaction. This reaction occurs when proteins and sugars present in the pecans react with the heat, resulting in the desirable browning and flavor development. Professional bakers know that the sweet spot in the middle is around 300 degrees Fahrenheit, but you can slide down to a lower temperature for longer time or slide up to a higher temperature for a shorter period. 4. How toasting changes nut texture and crunch. Beyond flavor, toasting completely transforms the texture of nuts in the most delicious way. Toasting nuts gives them better texture and crunch, creating that satisfying bite that makes baked goods so irresistible. Raw nuts can sometimes feel a bit soft or chewy in baked goods, but toasted nuts maintain their structure and provide textural contrast. Toasting improves their texture, too. While some raw nuts can be a bit pasty, toasted nuts are crisp and snappy. This textural improvement isn't just about the immediate eating experience, it also affects how the nuts hold up during the baking process. Your nuts will stay toasty and crunchy throughout the whole baking process, even under layers of cake or pie filling. This means that every bite of your finished baked good will have that perfect textural contrast that separates good desserts from great ones. 5. The volatile oil release that changes everything. The real magic happens when heat causes nuts to release their volatile oils, those aromatic compounds that create the deep, complex flavors we associate with perfectly toasted nuts. Bring nuts back to room temperature, or warm slightly in the microwave, before eating them to bring back the volatile oils that give nuts their delicious nutty taste. These oils aren't just sitting on the surface waiting to be released. They're locked inside the nut's cellular structure, and heat is the key that sets them free. High temperatures and long durations of roasting were needed for the formation of these N-heterocyclic compounds. Pyrazines and pyrols were considered as the key aroma in the toasted almond, corresponding to the typical nutty aroma. When you toast nuts properly, you're essentially creating hundreds of new flavor compounds. The process generates aldehydes, pyrazines, furans, and other aromatic compounds that give toasted nuts their characteristic smell and taste. These compounds don't exist in raw nuts, they're created through the toasting process. 6. Different methods for different results. Not all toasting methods are created equal, and choosing the right one can make the difference between good nuts and great ones. I prefer the oven because it'll toast more evenly, while a skillet risks overcooking the outside of your nuts before the inside is done. The oven method gives you the most consistent results with the least babysitting. Pour the nuts into a dry skillet. Turn the heat to medium. Then stir, toss, and shake the nuts a few times as the skillet heats up, and continue to do so until the nuts are golden brown and toasted. This will take about 3 to 7 minutes. However, this method requires constant attention and stirring to prevent burning. For those looking for convenience, the nuts are tossed with 1/4 teaspoon of a neutral cooking oil, such as canola, which is said to help them brown in the microwave so they toast more evenly. Then they're spread out in an even layer on a microwave-safe plate or a piece of parchment paper and microwaved in 1-minute increments on high power, until toasted, 3 to 5 minutes total. While unconventional, this method surprisingly works well for small batches. 7. Timing is everything in the toasting game. The difference between perfectly toasted nuts and burnt disappointments often comes down to just a minute or two. Spread the nuts onto a rimmed baking sheet and bake until lightly browned, 6 to 10 minutes, depending on the type of nut and size of the pieces. Different nuts have different optimal toasting times due to their varying oil content and size. Pine nuts, being smaller and more delicate, require special attention. Pine nuts. Smaller nuts such as pine nuts are notorious for burning quickly. Check them more frequently, usually every 2 minutes or so. Larger nuts like Brazil nuts or whole almonds can handle longer toasting times. As they toast, you'll notice a change in their fragrance as well as their color. The aroma is often your best indicator of doneness. When you smell that rich, nutty fragrance filling your kitchen, your nuts are likely ready. Trust your nose as much as your eyes when determining the perfect moment to remove them from heat. 8. The chemical transformation you can't see. While you can see nuts browning and smell their aroma developing, there's an entire world of chemical reactions happening that you can't observe directly. During the processing of nuts, the Maillard reaction, caramelization and oil oxidation contribute to the formation of desirable properties in nuts, creating the complex flavors we love. The Maillard reaction produces hundreds of different compounds, each contributing to the overall flavor profile. In the cooking process, Maillard reactions can produce hundreds of different flavor compounds depending on the chemical constituents in the food, the temperature, the cooking time, and the presence of air. This explains why toasted almonds taste different from toasted walnuts, even when prepared identically. Research has identified specific compounds that form during nut toasting. Research has identified numerous volatile compounds formed during roasting, including pyrazines, aldehydes, esters, alcohols, acids, hydrocarbons, and ketones, with the specific compounds varying based on roasting time and conditions. Each of these compounds contributes to the final flavor profile in its own way. 9. Why oil roasted versus dry roasted matters. The choice between dry roasting and oil roasting isn't just about preference, it fundamentally affects both flavor and how the nuts will perform in your baked goods. It's not always appropriate to roast nuts with oil, especially when they are being used in a baking, as the oil does increase their oiliness and can throw off the recipe. For baking applications, dry roasting is usually the way to go. You don't need to use oil to toast nuts. Since nuts have their own natural oils, you can skip adding oil to your pan or baking sheet. The nuts' natural oils provide plenty of fat for the toasting process. However, there are times when oil roasting makes sense. Roasting nuts with a touch of oil is a really nice way to add flavor and crispness. I especially like to match the nut with the oil and have small jars of almond and walnut oil in my refrigerator for that purpose. This technique works beautifully for nuts that will be eaten as snacks or used as garnishes rather than mixed into batters. 10. The nutritional impact of toasting. Many bakers worry that toasting nuts might destroy their nutritional value, but the reality is more nuanced than you might expect. Whether dry or oil roasted, the nutrient content of roasted nuts varies only slightly compared to raw natural nuts. Most nutrients, particularly minerals, become more concentrated during the roasting process, as moisture, water, is lost. As a result, roasted nuts have less water and a slightly higher concentration of minerals. There are some losses, however. B group vitamins and vitamin E are not heat stable. This means their levels are slightly reduced in roasted nuts, compared with raw nuts, due to the roasting process. The amount of loss depends on the nut variety and the length of roasting time. The key is finding the balance between flavor development and nutritional preservation. Research on roasting effects shows mixed results. Fatty acid compositions were not affected by roasting. Levels of tocopherol isomers can be reduced after roasting, and hydrophilic antioxidant capacity decreased significantly in hazelnuts, 1.4-fold, macadamia nuts, 1.7-fold, and walnuts, 3.7-fold. However, the flavor benefits often outweigh these modest nutritional changes. 11. Storage secrets for pre-toasted nuts. Once you've perfectly toasted your nuts, proper storage becomes crucial for maintaining that hard-won flavor and texture. Store any extra toasted nuts or seeds in an airtight container in the refrigerator for 1 to 2 weeks, or freeze them in an airtight freezer container for 1 to 3 months. The key is protecting them from air, moisture, and light. They also tend to go rancid quicker than raw nuts, so you'll get more longevity out of bags of nuts you toast yourself. This is why many professional bakers toast nuts in small batches rather than preparing large quantities at once. Fresh toasted nuts will always outperform stored ones in terms of flavor intensity. The storage container you choose matters too. Glass jars with tight-fitting lids work well, as do vacuum-sealed bags. The flavor and texture keeps if they were fully cool before you stored them. Never store warm nuts, as the trapped heat can create condensation that leads to soggy nuts and potential spoilage. 12. When not to toast your nuts. While toasting usually improves nuts, there are specific situations where raw nuts might be the better choice. When you're looking for a more sweet, raw nut flavor. Raw almonds, for example, have a sort of floral sweetness that might nicely complement a fruit crumble. Sometimes that clean, pure nut flavor is exactly what your recipe needs. When your nuts will get toasted anyway by virtue of cooking. For example, my banana walnut muffins have nuts garnishing the top if I toasted them first, since they're right on the outside and exposed to the heat of the oven as the muffins bake, they might burn. Understanding your recipe's cooking method helps you make the right decision. Another consideration is the final use of your baked goods. 99% of the time, I enjoy my hearty whole wheat walnut bread as toast, so the nuts in the bread get toasted as the slices are exposed to the heat of the toaster. I don't need to toast them beforehand. Think about how your finished product will be served and consumed. 13. Professional tips for perfect results every time. It's best to toast nuts whole, then to chop them if you need smaller pieces. When nuts are chopped before toasting, they are more likely to burn. This simple tip can save you from many toasting disasters. Smaller pieces have more surface area exposed to heat, making them cook faster and burn more easily. You'll want to transfer the hot nuts to a room temperature receptacle once they're toasted to prevent further browning. Even after removing nuts from the oven, they continue cooking from residual heat. Moving them immediately to a cool surface stops this process and prevents overcooking. It is important to check the nuts frequently while they roast and to stir them often. Most ovens have hot spots, so you want to move the nuts around for even roasting. Set a timer for halfway through the expected roasting time and give the nuts a stir. This simple step ensures even browning and prevents some nuts from burning while others remain pale. The practice of toasting nuts before baking transforms ordinary recipes into extraordinary ones through the release of volatile oils and the development of complex flavors. The science is clear. Heat unlocks aromatic compounds that simply don't exist in raw nuts, while creating the perfect texture and depth of flavor that elevates any baked good. Whether you choose oven roasting at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for even browning, or quick stovetop toasting for immediate results, the small investment of time yields tremendous returns in flavor. Remember to toast whole nuts before chopping, store them properly to maintain freshness, and trust your nose to tell you when they're perfectly done. What difference do you think this simple technique could make in your next batch of cookies?